Well, welcome, leader.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
How important it is to Broward County to have you and your counterpart in the Senate, Senator Smith, be Democratic leaders at the same time? You grew up very close to each other. You're friends. You tell stories on each other.
Well, he normally tells stories. I tell the truth. But it's good for Broward County, and it's a reflection of the fact that we think we represent some of the best constituents in the state. I know everybody says that, but it really is a pleasure to represent people who are following the issues, people who respect the time and what you do, and it's been a real pleasure to represent Broward County.
Do you and Senator Smith get together and kind of chart some issues of interest to Democrats?
What we do, and we talk all the time, but what we have done is we've made a point to have, on at least 2 occasions already during the session, to have our leadership team to actually go out and sit down over lunch or sit down over dinner where we can address what are the critical issues and what position we'll be taking on those issues.
Well, let's talk about those critical issues. Out of all the issues that come before the legislature, and I think there are usually more than 3,000 bills, what are the most top-of-mind issues for Democrats in the 2013 session?
Well, it's always going to be education, but we have some election issues that are different this session that we're dealing with. But by far, the most important issue right now is Medicaid expansion, and whether it be title Medicaid or just insurance for working families is what we want to see, and it's a critical need, and more importantly, it's a blessed opportunity to take advantage of the benefits that are out there on the table right now.
Well, let's talk about Medicaid. It seems like policy direction is all over the place. The governor is saying he's open to Medicaid expansion at least for 3 years to take advantage of the federal money coming down. We've had plans to totally get out of Medicaid and do a state-run program. We've had plans to start a private insurance model using some Medicaid dollars. And that creates kind of a confusion, I would think. If you're a legislator and you're trying to figure what direction you're going in, and probably confusion in the private market.
Well, I think that a lot of the confusion stems from the reluctance on the part of the state of Florida going back to 2010 to embrace the expansion effort. You know, we waited until the Supreme Court and then the presidential election. But one of the things the Supreme Court did when they said that the Affordable Health Care is the law of the land, it gave states option. You know, you take this portion, but if you want to expand, that's up to the state. And therein where's the confusion coming in. You have states who are saying, well, we don't want to expand. You have states saying, well, we'll expand, but we want to do it this way. And the federal government has, in my opinion, been reasonable, saying you don't have to just do it the way we want, but these are some of the things that have to be included. And then you can draw down in the state of Florida's position, $50+ billion over the next 10 years. It's a little difficult to turn that down. The governor, you're right, said that he wants to do it for 3 years. That's the 3 years where the federal government is going to pay 100% of the care. Now, after that, it may go to 90%, but it'll never be less than 90% that they pay. And if you ask our hospitals across the state, if you ask the needy residents across the state, the stakeholders who know what's going on, they'll tell you that it's a no-brainer, that we should be taking it. Although the Senate is doing it under a different name, they wanted to take it. The governor was opposed to it initially, but he's on board now. It's just the House at this point have not put forth a plan of how we will draw down those monies. Again, it's 130% above the poverty level, but it's a lot of money, a lot of services, and more importantly, they're talking about 55,000 jobs, not just your run-of-the-mill jobs, good jobs that it brings to the state of Florida. So, you know, I'm hopeful that we will be able to embrace it and move forward.
Could this be an issue that might require a special session or two to wind up?
Well, if you have the Senate including a certain portion of that money in their budget and it's none in the budget for the House, it could require a special session just to address this issue. I'm hopeful that it doesn't come to that. It really doesn't have to come to that, but if it takes that to get it right for the people of the state of Florida on such a critical issue, then we have to do what we have to do. We've been elected to make these decisions, and we need to take the time to make the right decisions for the people of the state of Florida.
You mentioned the voting process, the elections process as being one of the top of mind issues for Democrats. What do you think of the voting reform legislation that's been passing through the legislature? What are its strengths and weaknesses?
Well, the reform in terms of the election process, it's twofold. You have the ethics portion that deals with money in campaigns, but you also have the problem that we have with the actual voting. The actual voting, being able to know that people know that their votes are counted, and they know that they don't have to wait in line for 4 and 5 hours to vote. We've passed an elections bill that's over in the Senate now, and we're hoping that it comes back. There are certain things we were hopeful that would be included. It looked like at one time the Senate had reached an agreement on most of those issues. So we're hoping that that comes back and we pass it out of the House on a bipartisan effort. We all agreed to it, knowing that it would be amended and come back. Those amendments were put on, and now it looks like there may be some issues. But if it comes back with the additional elements that we expected, we'll vote for it again. If not, then there may be a lot more debate. However, when you deal with the ethics, that's a different thing. We're in favor of elimination of the CCEs, which is what we sent over. We had a problem with the infusion of more money into the process. They were raising contributions limits from $500 to $10,000. And there was also efforts to carry over amounts of $50,000, $100,000 from one election to another. Those were the suggestions and some of the initial thoughts. Well, we don't think that we need to infuse more money into this process. And that's where we have a difference of opinion about it. But the best part of it, though, is the fact that there's going to be more transparency. That way, individuals know who's sending out certain ads. Individuals know, the citizens know, who are contributing to the various campaigns. That's what we think is the best part of the changes.
Going back to the elections or the voting process itself, we had all those television pictures of long lines down in your neck of the woods and so forth. To you, what are the most important steps that the state can take to reduce those long voting lines and so forth that are in the legislation that's moving?
Well, I think you're absolutely right that those visions of those long lines and the fact that when the final count was tallied for the president, Florida still had not even finished tallying their votes. I think that that's why we've been pushed to make some decisions. I think the number one thing is giving discretion to the supervisors of elections in our 67 various counties. They know what's the best spots where we don't have to, where we can place the machines, and we were kind of tying their hands, saying you had to have it here, or you had to have it here. When we went around the state and talked to the supervisors of elections, what they asked for discretion. Give us the ability to decide where we're going to set up. Give us the ability to decide which days within a certain defined number of days that we would like to vote on. And the people would like to have some mandatory Sunday voting. That's been important in terms of early voting. This is what the people were asking for. And I think if you listen to the residents and you listen to the supervisors of elections, then we're going to make the right decisions. A lot of time we try to manage from Tallahassee, and where the individuals in the communities, they know what works, and they've been doing it for a while. And I know down in Broward County, our supervisor of election in Palm Beach and Miami, they have a good handle on this, and if we don't tie their hands, we allow them to do what's needed, they'll get it done right.
Another priority you mentioned was education. Absolutely. Education funding, I'm sure. But in terms of how do you feel about Governor Scott's recommending across the board pay raises for teachers. Some people say, in the Republican Party, say, well, that should be tied to merit. And some people say, well, the $2,500 is too much, it should be lower, so forth and so on. Where do you stand?
Well, I'm glad to be able to agree with the governor on some things. Some things we disagree on, but I agree with him that the teachers deserve the well-earned pay raises that they will receive in this budget. I tell you, all of our state workers, I'm here in Tallahassee when I come up and I see the hard-working people in the Capitol and what they do for our state, the police officers, the fact that we're beginning to recognize our, that we've not done right by our state workers. And I know it's been a function of the economy as well as other things, but when we have the ability to reward our state workers, we should do that. And as specifically as it relates to the teachers, certainly they should be paid. We should pay them as the professionals that they are. We need them. Quite frankly, Steve, if it was up to me, I would give them LeBron money. They work that hard, and they put up with some of the kids and the efforts that they have there, and they do it because they love what they do. If you I go to these classrooms and I see them, and normally it's during career day, but to see what the teachers do, it's just remarkable.
Fine. We've got about 30 seconds left. What's the most important item being discussed with regard to school safety?
Well, there are a number of bills that are out there, but I think that what we need to discuss is how we work together with the school districts, the municipalities. In my area, they've always had a little bit of dispute about who's going to pay for school security. You have resource officers who are with the municipalities, then you have the school district. But we've got to come together and just get it done and say, well, we need to have this, we need to have the presence of law enforcement. It doesn't have to be overwhelming, but sometimes just to have an officer there on a daily basis cut down on potential problems. So just cooperation amongst the entities.
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, and thanks for having me.